Welcome everyone. You're listening to the account with a news report for day 445 of the war in Ukraine. Thank you for tuning in. Today I have two extra news segments. The first regarding Zelensky's visit to Germany and the second regarding the latest Russian missile and drone attack. I also have one article I want to point out. All other updates are grouped into the usual situation inside Ukraine, the occupied territories, Russia and Belarus, and the international developments. Before we start the news though, the flashpoints along the front. Bakhmut. Due to successful Ukrainian counterattacks, the front in the northern part was pushed back significantly. Supplies are being transported along the freed O0506 road, as evidenced by videos shared on social media. Today, there were more reports of Ukrainian advances and Russian retreats. Sources close to Wagnerovka claimed Russian units abandoned the area around Dubovo-Vasilivka. In the south, Ukrainian units continue to dislodge Russian soldiers and advance deep into the forest area. Inside Bakhmut, not much has changed. Deputy Minister of Defense of Ukraine Hanna Maliar reported about the continued advances of Ukrainian units. In a Telegram post, Maliar said that Ukrainian forces on May 14th also liberated a considerable amount of area in the forest near Ivanivske and captured an undisclosed number of Russian soldiers from various units. Ukrainian journalist Anatoly Stefan reported about a strike on Klishchivka yesterday that allegedly killed a number of Russian officers and commanders. Today, Russia's Ministry of Defense announced that 2 Russian commanders had been killed in action near Bakhmut, Donetsk Oblast. Colonel Vyacheslav Makarov and Deputy Commander of the Army Corps for Military Political Work, Colonel Yevgeny Brovko. And now for a quick interesting update. In case you were not aware of the destructive power of a FAB 1500 bomb, this picture should clarify things. You can see journalist Denis Kazanskyi standing in the middle of the crater. Russia is using these bombs almost every day. And now a quick update since today is a special day. Today is Mother's Day. Today we thank the one who gave birth to us, who nurtured us, who stood beside us in testing times, who cared less for herself and cared more for us, who sacrificed her ambition to make sure we have a good life ahead. The soldiers of Ukraine congratulated their mothers in their own way. The National Guard of Ukraine posted a video in which a soldier talked about his mother who is waiting for him to return from the war. Lieutenant General Mykola Oleshchuk, the commander of the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, shared a greeting for mothers from the soldiers of the Air Command Center. Ukrainian state border guards have also congratulated their mothers. Soldiers of the 45th Separate Artillery Brigade of the Armed Forces of Ukraine read out a poem by Natasya Semenyuk, written especially for the military. And now for the article I wanted to point out, titled The Hunt for Russian War Criminals, the year-long investigation to uncover Russian war crimes in Yahidne. A year after the liberation of Yahidne and the subsequent article published in Time magazine, the journalists of Ukrainska Pravda returned to the village. This is the story of a village under Russian occupation, how the members of this community survived, and how they are rebuilding their lives. Yahidne stands as one of the most striking examples of the sadism Russian soldiers turned out to be capable of in the occupied territories of Ukraine. The memory of what happened in the village is being preserved in different ways. Several exhibitions told the story of Yahidne's basement of death. The Regional Department of Culture wants to establish a museum in the local school. The Museum of Our Suffering, in the words of a Yahidne resident. Do check out the article, please, but mind you that the topic is quite heavy. To start the news segment, the updates on President Zelensky's visit to Germany. In the early morning, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that he arrived in Berlin. He met with German President Frank-Walter Steinmeier at Bellevue Palace for talks before meeting Federal Chancellor Olaf Scholz at the office of the Federal Chancellor in Berlin. At a joint press conference, Olaf Scholz assured Zelensky that Germany will support Ukraine for as long as needed. President Zelensky, in turn, thanked Germany for all the support Ukraine has received so far, saying Germany's support is the second largest after the United States. He also mentioned his work on a fighter jet coalition and is counting on the support of Germany in this matter. Zelensky said, "A few more visits and it will be sufficient." Ukraine and Germany also signed a joint declaration on the support for Ukraine and pressure on the Russian Federation. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky also met with members of the German Security Cabinet. Having briefed the members of the German Security Cabinet on the situation on the front line and the priority needs of the Ukrainian defense forces, the president emphasized the necessity of lifting restrictions and red lines on the supply of all types of weapons to Ukraine. Later, President Zelensky is expected in Aachen to receive the prestigious Charlemagne Prize he and the Ukrainian people were awarded. Following his visit to Germany, President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky is said to be heading for Paris next. The Élysée Palace, the official residence of the French president, has confirmed in a press release that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will visit Paris late in the evening. And now for the updates on the latest Russian drone and missile attack on Ukraine. As stated in last night's report already, air raid warnings were issued throughout Ukraine. The Air Force Command of the Armed Forces of Ukraine reported a Russian attack from various directions with Shahed 131-136 combat drones, Caliber cruise missiles fired from ships in the Black Sea, and KH-101, KH-555, and KH-55 cruise missiles fired from Tu-95MS strategic aircraft. Ukrainian air defense forces intercepted 3 cruise missiles and 25 UAVs. In Kyiv, no cruise missiles were detected, and all drones launched at the city were intercepted. Explosions were however reported in the city of Ternopil in Ternopil Oblast. The governor of the oblast, Volodymyr Trush, reported that warehouses belonging to commercial enterprises and a religious organization caught fire. 2 civilians were wounded as a result of the attack. Rescuers are working on the site, he added. The Ministry of Defense of Ukraine reported that the attack on Ternopil happened at the same time as the grand final of the Eurovision Song Contest. It is noteworthy because the band Tvorchi, who represented Ukraine and managed to win 6th place, is from Ternopil. Photos of the aftermath of the missile attack were shared this morning. A look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. President Volodymyr Zelensky, in his evening address, recalled how fruitful his meeting with Pope Francis has been, saying it could influence history. He told the Pope about Russian crimes and appealed to His Holiness to help return Ukrainian children abducted by Russia. President of Ukraine Volodymyr Zelensky and Prime Minister of Italy Giorgia Meloni signed a joint declaration in Rome on supporting Ukraine, holding Russia accountable, and increasing pressure on the Kremlin. According to leaked secret US intelligence documents, President Volodymyr Zelensky suggested occupying Russian villages to gain leverage over Moscow, as well as blowing up the Druzhba oil pipeline. Zelensky, when asked by reporters about the leaked documents, said, "We are not attacking Russian territory. We are liberating our legal lands. We are not interested in this, we do not have time for this, we do not have the strength, and we do not have extra weapons." Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. According to Melitopol Mayor Ivan Fedorov, Russian collaborators in the temporarily occupied territories are arranging for explosions themselves for 2 reasons. First, due to a Russian no-retreat policy, they need a good reason to be allowed to leave. One of those is the threat of assassination. Second, it allows the Russian occupation authorities to justify further so-called evacuations of settlements due to partisan activity. According to the morning report of the General Staff of Ukraine, Russian troops are intensively replenishing their units with convicts being brought to the occupied territories of Luhansk and Zaporizhia oblasts. According to the head of the Crimean parliament, Vladimir Konstantinov, Russian occupation authorities in Crimea will consider a proposal for cancelling the 1954 decision on the transfer of the peninsula to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic from the Russian Soviet Federative Socialist Republic. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. Air Force spokesperson Yuri Inat claimed on national television that yesterday 3 Russian helicopters and 2 aircraft were allegedly shot down by Russia's own air defense in Bryansk Oblast. Initially, Russian propagandists said that only 1 helicopter crashed because of an engine fire, keeping silent about its destruction and an explosion, before finally acknowledging the shooting down of 2 helicopters and 1 aircraft, blaming it on Ukrainian saboteurs. The Belarusian president, Alexander Lukashenko, following the news of his deteriorating health, did not appear at the celebration of the Day of the State Flag, State Emblem and National Anthem of Belarus today. Konstantin Zatulin, first deputy chairman of the Russian State Duma Committee on Commonwealth of Independent States Affairs, has confirmed that Belarusian President Alexander Lukashenko is sick, but did not disclose any details. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. The G7 countries and the European Union are planning to ban Russian gas imports via routes where Moscow has previously cut supplies. South Africa reported that US Ambassador Ruben Brigitte has apologized for his claim that South Africa has supplied weapons to Russia. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defence. On paper, the Russian Combined Grouping of Forces, CGF, in Ukraine is similarly organized to the invasion force of 446 days ago. It still likely consists of over 200,000 personnel organized into around 70 combat regiments and brigades, divided into 5 groups of forces. It still struggles with limited freedom to conduct air operations. However, in February 2022, it consisted of professional soldiers, was largely equipped with reasonably modern vehicles, and had been regularly exercised, aspiring to complex joint operations. Now the force is mostly poorly trained mobilized reservists and increasingly reliant on antiquated equipment, with many of its units severely understrengthed. It routinely only conducts very simple infantry-based operations. Critically, it is unlikely that CGF has been able to generate a large, capable, mobile reserve to respond to emerging operational challenges. It is unlikely to be an organization which will effectively cohere large-scale military effect along the 1,200-kilometer front line under stress. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Ukrainian forces continue to counterattack in the Bakhmut area amid unconfirmed claims of further marginal Ukrainian gains southwest of the city as of May 13th. Russian forces conducted a Shahed 131-136 drone strike against Ukraine on the night of May 12th to 13th. Russian media reported that 2 Russian Mi-8 helicopters, a Su-34 bomber and an Su-35 fighter, crashed in Bryansk Oblast on May 13th, which some Russian sources claimed was caused by Ukrainian air defenses. Russian sources claim that Ukrainian forces struck rear Russian areas in Luhansk Oblast with British Storm Shadow cruise missiles on May 12th and 13th, prompting heightened Russian anxiety about potential Ukrainian abilities to target Russian logistics. Russian President Vladimir Putin's insistence on conducting the war in Ukraine in the style of the Great Patriotic Special Military Operation has opened the door for several hardline actors to advocate for the institutionalization of increasingly Stalinist domestic policies. Former Pacific Fleet Commander Admiral Sergei Avakiants reportedly received an appointment to lead a new Russian force generation organization called Voin, Warrior, which reportedly replaced Russia's legacy Russian Volunteer Society for Assistance to the Army, Aviation and Navy of Russia, DOSAAF. Belarusian President Lukashenko was reportedly hospitalized at a presidential hospital in Minsk on May 13th. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The enemy continues to concentrate its main efforts on the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka and Marinka directions. In general, during the day, about 30 combat clashes took place on the indicated areas of the front. Bakhmut and Marinka remain at the epicenter of hostilities. In the Kupiansk direction, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the areas of Maziotivka and Sinkivka. In the Bakhmut direction, the enemy continues to conduct offensive actions. Heavy fighting continues for the city of Bakhmut. In addition, during the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the direction of the settlements of Hrihorivka, Bodanivka, and Predechine. In the Marinka direction, units of the defense forces repelled numerous enemy attacks in the area of the city of Marinka. The Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation continues to take measures to integrate the illegal armed formations of the so-called DPR into its own armed forces. Thus, an order was issued to the entire personnel of one of the brigades of the 1st Army Corps of the Russian Federation, in which the former servicemen of the so-called DPR were given a mandatory condition to replace their military tickets with military tickets of the Russian Federation, as well as to re-sign contracts with the Russian Federation. The minimum term of military service is 2 years. In case of refusal, these persons will be sent to the most dangerous areas of the front to participate in assault operations as part of advanced units. And that concludes today's report. Should you be interested in any article I mentioned, you can find links to them in the description as usual. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.